IFS, because of the models they use, because of the data direct from the Treasury they input to those models, a reliable witness to what's going to happen to our economy.
I'm not so sure that you I think, for example, in capital gains tax on the rich, distribution curve will look more extreme. I think that what they've actually used is very broad brush, don't necessarily, but they haven't even compared like with like. So I think the regressive analysis is surprisingly unreliable. And I think that, though I want to argue that this idea of it's regressive or progressive isn't, so I support the analysis and I'm against regressive measures. But I'm not sure that we can say that. Moreover, this is just $6 billion worth of cuts. Really, we have to wait on our assessment until October, till we have the spending review, until we can really assess the impact of the cuts. But if they are regressive, I will be among the first to inveigh against them.
What the IFS is saying?
I am, and it's not the first report to say this. Tim Horton from the Fabian Society has looked at the impact of spending cuts. That was found to be regressive. Left Foot Forward did some analysis on the cuts to local authorities. That very much hits the most deprived areas. And there's been a lot of what the total impact of the tax and benefit cuts have been. So this isn't the first saying it's regressive, but it does add to the calls for George Osborne to come clean on what the distributional impact of this budget.
Again, I think that's a little unfair. I think it doesn't, for example, take account of the changes that I know are going to come out of the DW of making work, take account of the idea that if we have a growing economy, move from poverty and welfare to work. So I think that is a report that is say that, but let me stress that, and we have a life. I think that is, and it's really important party is that innovation area. They don't just think what can we do to deliver assets to some of our society. The only way you can really have a progressive government, if we challenge the concentration of wealth, if we challenge monopolies, and if we distribute not just income right along across all of our population.
Will Straw, do you come out of the political spectrum, not necessarily Phillip Blond, who glory almost in the idea of having a regressive budget, saying, look, it's bound to be. You've got, for instance, 250,000 households where nobody got to do something about long-term welfare dependency. That means the poor will suffer the most because you're having massive cuts to things like housing benefit, kind of thing. Regressive or progressive doesn't matter. We've got to do something about welfare dependency.
Well, I mean, there was a consensus qualities. Everyone remembers the big election claiming that Labour, as soon as the numbers don't, there's a whole number of... Last week we heard George Equality, it's about inequality across generations. Today Mark Hoban saying, oh no, wait, it's going to be trickle-down economics. It's the corporation tax is going to improve growth. Now we've got Fraser Nelson from The Spectator saying we should do away with the requirements to look at this altogether. The veneer that we saw during the election of Conservatives seeming to care about this agenda has disappeared, and I think that's very dangerous. Of course we have to deal with so-called benefit cheats, but it makes up a tiny proportion of the overall budget deficit we've got to deal with. What the Conservatives and the coalition is chosen to target most of the deficit reduction on people at the bottom, on public sector workers, people who did nothing to cause this crisis. They're putting more into spending cuts and tax rises. That's a choice they've made, and it's going to end up making the poor poorer and not doing what they said in the budget on the rich.
Phillip Blond, politically, presumably this becomes a big problem for the Tories if you have a situation which unfolds where those within the coalition, particularly on the left of the Liberal Democrat Party, start to say, OK, in terms of social justice and fairness, we can't sign up to this anymore.
Well, I think it's a problem for the entire government, and I think, again, I think it's being too sanguine and being party political. It's the Labour Party who was behind the massive increase in income disparity. It's the Labour Party who didn't solve poverty. And here we are, barely just over 100 days in, and we haven't yet seen what the new coalition government is trying to do to deliver of the economic settlement in our country. And if we can deliver that, and I think coalition government should, then I think that's the time in which, in respect to whether they fail or succeed, to make this judgment. This is just party political posturing at this point. It's too early. Let's give the government the due. Let's give them the time to deliver on what they say, and we'll judge it again in October. And again, our judgment.
Talk to you again in October then. Phillip Blond, Will Straw, thanks both very much indeed. Your thoughts on that?